Hello, everyone. I recently had a VOW best of three traditional draft that I thought was really interesting. I know a big talk around the format has been the quantity of the bombs and how powerful they are. And this draft, I thought in particular, was influenced very heavily by that. And I thought that people might find it useful and interesting to take a look at it. So just jumping in. We start with a pack, pretty easy, Catilda. Just again, I think a lot of people are on board with the fact that this is one of the best rares in the set. Very difficult to beat, impossible to race. And yeah, so looking at the rest of the pack here, we do have a decent white card in Kindly Ancestor and not too much else, which is unfortunate because that means that it's likely to put the person in our left into white, maybe one or two seats away. I could see someone taking, the Whispering Wizard over it, and then maybe, depending on their pick, some combination of, Gluttonous Guest or one of the Repo Scob or something. But anywho, I think you're never passing Catilda here. And then so here was kind of an interesting sort of decision point already in pick 2. I think Flame Blessed Bolt is really good. I think that it might be underrated. Even though people acknowledge that it's good, I think it's really good. I think it's, in the same tier of card as like a Braid. It can matter a lot just exiling in the format, and then also just, your regular 1 mana sort of shock effect is great. So that said, here I think that if I'm planning to play the Catilda, so already, this bomb pick is warping my draft quite a bit. I think that with the plan that I want to be playing this, I think it's better in blue-white. And also, incidentally, the Drake, I think, is at its best in blue-white. If there were a very good white card for me here, even one that wasn't as good as either of these two, I likely would have picked it so that I could still just lean harder into the Catilda to maximize my chance of playing it in my final deck. But as it stands, there's not a white card, and so I decided to go with the Drake for the upside, despite the fact that I really do like this Flame Blessed Bolt. And so here we get past, note there is a rare and uncommon missing here. So even though there's a pick 3 bleed dry, it's not like this is a signal. There could very easily be uncommons that you would pick over a bleed dry if your colors are not black yet. So say someone opened a rare in a different color, Infestation Expert, or the Biolume Egg. Quartermaster, Suitor, Rending Flame, all these are cards I think that you could pick over a bleed dry if your colors suggested to go that route. So yeah, I don't view this as much of a signal, but I do think that it's probably the best card in the pack. I think bleed dry and Flame Blessed Bolt are closer than a lot of people would think. Again, that's my opinion, but I still would say bleed dry is better. And another thing I'd take note of here, though, is that I am passing this Purifier, which kind of sucks, because after this Flame Blessed Bolt is gone, this pack is not especially impressive. Weaver is something that a lot of the green decks want to be playing, but on power level wise, there's not a lot here, which means that someone maybe 2 seats to my left, maybe 3, can very easily end up in white-black, which sucks for me because if they're taking white cards coming the other direction, that doesn't bode well for the Catilda. But that said, I'm still just taking the bleed dry, staying in one color. And it's really interesting. I think a lot of people would think, okay, I'm white because I have a Catilda, so this is the same thing as taking this. But I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, in my experience playing traditional draft, that having a good, consistent, functional deck is more important than the sort of how far beyond the average power level your deck is. So like, for example, if I end up playing this Catilda, but I have a bunch of unplayable or low playables in order to facilitate that, I think that's worse than if I just end up with a really solid deck that doesn't have a Catilda. And so I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say, well, this is one color and this is one color, and maybe the Purifier is probably better in white-black. But so yeah, anyways, I'm going with the bleed dry here. And who knows, maybe I end up at the time I'm thinking white-black or blue-white because I'm going to try and cut white as hard as I can to go into this Catilda. Oh, another comment on this pick, by the way. Notice that the Flame Blessed Bolt is the probably next best card in the pack, I think. And since we had passed a Flame Blessed Bolt over here, it means that the person to our left is likely to be in red, which there's upside for us there. Because if we want to be in white specifically, or any one color other than red, then the person immediately to our left being in red, it means they're less likely to be in one of, the colors that I want to be in. So it's nice to sometimes like not give up a large amount of value to do this, but also to cement the people in your left into colors that you feel strongly you're not going to end up in, so that on pack 2, when it comes back around, that you end up with a higher density of cards in your colors. So this pick here, there's a rare missing and 2 commons, and no red common here. So that means that the person to at least one person to my right has taken a red card out of this pack, maybe in a Braid or Flame Blessed Bolt would be my best guess. And for me, I actually view this Parasitic Grasp as a signal here, because I don't think this card is worse than any red common that could have been picked, and I actually prefer Grasp over Bleed Dry. Just in the dark. Now, obviously, later on in the draft, when you have to make a decision, you have to look at what your deck needs. But I think that the appeal of Bleed Dry being like, oh, I killed their bomb and it saved me and it won me the game, is a lot more memorable than, oh, I was on the draw and I Parasitic Grasped their 2-drop or 3-drop, and the life gain meant they could never race me, and I just won the game because I had an extra card and the game went long and I won. You don't think, man, Parasitic Grasp was great in that scenario. But I do actually like this card a lot, and pick one, pack one. I think it's even better than Bleed Dry. So that said, this to me is like a signal, given that there are commons missing from this pack. And my dream scenario here, I'm thinking, is that the person to my right is going to be in red, and the person to my left can't get off of 2 Flame Blessed Bolts, and they're also in red, and that would be awesome for me, because red is a color I'm not very likely to move into from here, I think. So from here, again, not the greatest pack for us. I'm starting to get a little sad. I'm not really seeing the white cards, and again, I really do want to be playing this Catilda, but I am pretty confident that I'm in black from here. Just this density of strong removal spells means that I likely am going to have good cards in black, and like I said, I'm kind of viewing this Parasitic Grasp as a bit of a signal. So here, I had thought about the Nurturing Presence a little bit, because blue-white loves Nurturing Presence, but given that I have these 2 great black cards, I'm going to just stay the course and take the Grizzly Ritual, and at the moment I'm thinking I'd like to end up in white-black so I can play the Catilda along with these removal spells and, do white-black grindy stuff like white-black likes to do. So from here, there's 4 white cards, but they're not cards that I want in my deck pretty much. And Dissenter, so here's where I started to think, okay, there is a small chance that I end up in blue-black. I don't know if, it's not like I've been seeing a bunch of blue cards. So like I said, a small chance. I'm not hoping that happens. I hope that I get a bunch of white cards, especially in pack 2, because I haven't passed much white. And then I can just stay in white-black and play my bomb rare, and that'd be awesome. But if I do end up in blue-black, Dissenters, I think one of the best things to be sacrificing in that deck. And then even if I do end up in black-white, Dissenter is a playable 2-drop, I think. It's, not at its best without quite as much exploit synergies, but you can still play Dissenter in white-black and be totally fine. So I think it's just the pick here, again, stays in the color that I have the highest density of playables in, and yeah, like I said, it's unfortunate. There's a bunch of white cards and no real good ones, but I think this is sort of the safe pick. And here I'm, again, a little confused. I haven't seen much white, but there's a Fierce Retribution, which is a great white removal spell. I'm happy to see it because, like I said, my plan is to end up in white-black if the cards are there for me. And Fierce Retribution is a great thing to be doing early game. And yeah, so I'm happy to pick it. And then also something I noticed, this Blood Tithe Harvester, which is, I think, one of, if not the best uncommon just on power level in the set, is really late. And moreover, notice I had a small read earlier in the draft that someone on my right might have been in red because it was that pick where there was either like a Braid or Flame Blessed Bolt that it might be missing because there was no red common. which suggests to me that black is really where I want to be. Because if that person was in red and they saw what for them would have been probably like, let's say I pick 4 or 5 Blood Tithe Harvester, and they were also in black, they would absolutely pick this over anything else left in the pack. So at least that one person in red is likely not in black, which is again, it's just one person and it's a small detail, but it suggests to me that black is where I want to be this draft. And so I'll figure out where I'm going to go from there. But that said, Retribution is a great card, and again, I'm still leaning into playing this Catilda as hard as I can, and I'm hoping to pick up white cards in pack 2. Here we got, again, not a super high power level pack. I already have one expensive removal spell, and I don't feel like I'm going to be hurting for big removals. I already have a Bleed Dry and a Grizzly Ritual. I don't think I'm going to need this. I mentioned there's an outside chance I end up in blue-black from here. So, Gargantua, I think, is good in that deck, and in general is not a bad card. So I'm just going to pick it up here. I don't feel like I'm passing that much. And it's kind of interesting. Adamant Will is a very playable white card, and I mentioned that I want to be cutting white, but it's not like a signal for anyone to move in. And even in the white-black decks that are where this would be headed, like a little bit more grindy, if I have like Doom Dissenters, a bunch of removal spells, well, I don't want Adamant Wills in my deck with a bunch of removal spells and late game threats anyways. So, it doesn't feel like I'm giving up that much here. And here, so looking at what happened from, this is our initial pack we opened. There's a white card remaining, which I like, and I'm not huge on Griff Rider specifically, but it's playable, and so I'll pick it up here over these green cards that I'm pretty far away from playing, or this blue card. I'm not really big on Entomber. I know sometimes you have to play it, or some decks it has a lot of synergies, but in general I don't like it. And looking at what was taken here, Gluttonous Guest, Blood Fountain, so black cards missing. We expected the Whispering Wizard to be taken and the Kindly Ancestor. So we know that there's probably at least one white drafter. And the one thing I mentioned before, I'm a little concerned that the person who took the Kindly Ancestor also might have taken the Purifier we passed from the other pack, which would suck for us. But I don't think they had enough density of cards to stay in those colors unless they were particularly stubborn or they opened their early packs well. So hopefully that's the case, and they're not in white-black. Looking at this one, I'm just going to take the white card. Again, I think there's basically 0% chance I play these. Monstrosity I have played in decks before, but I don't like to. And again, I'm not interested in really playing that in this like blue-black deck if it does end up that route. And so whatever, in the sideboard, I don't mind having this if you run into maybe like a deck with a bunch of the... this card. I forgot what it was called, but the Dormant Grove, or like if it has like Glorious Sunrises, I could see maybe siding this in some matchups, but here, not that big. Now this pick is really interesting for me. I think that Undying Malice is good with the exploit synergies, right? So I already have like an exploiter here, and more particularly, even if I end up in blue-black, it's good, but it also has synergies with the Storm Chaser Drake, and this came up a lot in the games I was playing. Undying Malice, the Drake, for an extra card, and then sack it to an exploit trigger so that you can get some value off of it, is kind of a nice synergy. So I like this in general in like blue-black anyways, and the fact that I already have some reasons to move into it is kind of nice. Specifit I'm not really big on. I think you have to have an extremely high density of exploit cards to make this playable and good. Just because a 1-mana 1/1 isn't so great, and the exploit decks, in my experience, they're not lacking value. Like, it's not like, I didn't get my free 1/1 to sack, and that's the reason I lost the game. The reason that they usually lose is because they're slower or they get run over. So if that's the case, then just having like this 1-mana 1/1 isn't really plugging any holes in your deck. And it doesn't matter if you get a bunch of extra value at the end of games with those decks to me, because winning with an extra 5 cards in hand versus an extra 4 cards in hand is not really that important in my opinion. So I don't like this unless I have really high density of exploit creatures. So yeah, Undying Malice here. Here, pick up a second one. Again, I'm not playing these green cards, so why not? And just, random packs at the end. So here, pack 2, we have this Diagraph Scavenger, which I like quite a bit in just basically every black deck. And looking at what I'm passing, again, I'm not really in red or green. I'm kind of straddling between blue and white at the moment. Again, trying to hedge towards white. I want to play this Catilda, but I didn't really see much. I have a Retribution and a Catilda, which is better than my Drake comparatively, but I noticed that my thought process at the moment is that if I don't pick up white cards in pack 2, I'm not feeling super confident I'm going to see them in pack 3. I saw a late Retribution, but other than that, there was just not a lot of white cards available. So I'm thinking that, again, I'm just going to take the black card. It's, I think, probably the just best card in the pack anyways, now that I take a look at it. But again, I like to kind of have an idea of where I'm headed. And so if I'm missing on white cards here in pack 2, I think that I'm unlikely rather to be in a hard black white, but we'll see how it goes. And so here was an interesting one. So here I had to kind of make a decision, because on one hand, we mentioned, okay, we want to get our white cards from pack 2, and these are good playable white cards. And we want to play the Catilda, so we have a lot of motivation to be in white. But we are giving up a really good card if we pick one of them here, and that Fellstinger is in a color we know we're going to be in, right? We're kind of 100% black at this point, and it fits into both decks really well, black-white and black-blue. And so here I just went with kind of the safe pick. Again, I know that Catilda is great. I know that I need to pick up white cards in pack 2, but the decision I made is to pick a good card that I know 100% will be in my deck. Whereas if I don't end up with the white cards from this pack, then this could have been a wasted pick, and I'd much rather have something I know is going to happen in the interest of having a consistent, good playable deck. So then looking at this one, this pick was very interesting for me. I basically noticed that there's no white common here, which sucks for me because we're only in pick 3, which means there's a rare missing, and someone took a white common out of this pack. Meaning they're likely not in green. And so what I think happened is from pack 1, the Kindly Ancestor and the Purifier, like we were talking about, someone moved in on that, and that sucks for us because we wanted to pick up white cards pack 2. We were trying to cut white pack 1, and there really wasn't much white aside from this Retribution we picked. And so if the person on our left is also in white, well, that doesn't work out for us. That said, so this Repo Scob is my hedge, right? So I can take this and have a chance to move into blue-black exploit. It's already better than your average Repo Scob because I have good targets for it. Undying Malice is decent with it. Parasitic Grasp is excellent with it because cheap removal that keeps you alive is exactly what you want when you have kind of a clunky value card. And then the Bleed Dry, of course, is a great target as well. So this is like my hedge into blue-black, even though right now I'm still really wanting to play this Catilda, but if the cards aren't there for it, I'm just going to build the best deck that I can. And so looking here, there is, I think, no black card, right? Yeah. So there's no black card here, which again, I'm thinking my hypothesis about the Purifier situation, looking a little stronger. No white card in the last pack, no black card in this pack. But here I'm going to take the dual land. My thought here is if I end up in white-black, who doesn't like having better mana? And if I end up in blue-black, there's a chance I might splash, say, this Retribution, and having this extra fixing could be useful. And I'm not giving up too much for it. Beguiler is maybe a playable card in white-black, but you're never, missing it a lot, and you're never excited to have it. So, I figure I might as well take this and see where it leads. And this pick, again, no black cards. Not particularly exciting pack, but I'll take Repo Scob number 2. Again, I still would like to be in white-black here, but this way I have an out into blue-black if the white cards are just straight up not here. And so here, I'm looking at just Wretched Throng. I'm severely lacking 2-drops here in both versions of the deck, whether I end up in blue-black or white-black. I have a Storm Chaser Drake and a Doom Dissenter, and that's it. So I kind of want to prioritize it, so I'm happy to pick one up here without giving up too much. Syncopate's fine, but it's not something I'm actively interested in, at least in blue-black. So I'm going with a Throng here. And I was very surprised by this when I saw this pack. This is a pretty late imprisonment, given that I haven't seen white cards from this direction the whole pack, and again, that common was missing in pick 2. So I really want to be in Catilda. It's an enchantment, it's a removal spell, it's in white, right? So all these things combined, I could have, mentioned we were missing 2-drops. I could have taken a 2-drop here to be safe, but again, this is me taking a bit of a gamble. These picks may have been like kind of quote unquote wasted if I end up there, but Catilda is so good, I'm still kind of straddling between going blue and going white with making sure that I'm going to prioritize black playables when I have them. Something for me to consider too, like that goes back to that Felstinger pick. If I had gambled on this, I would have an extra white card, but also let's say, for example, I end up going into blue-black, right? Then that white card would have been wasted, and so I feel like being able to take picks like this that are speculative is an advantage of having taken stable things at an earlier point, right? Because I'm not as scared about not making playables when I have cards that are guaranteed in my main colors. Moving on here, I actually don't think I would play any of these cards in most versions of the deck. I've seen Wedding Invitation sometimes in white-black, or I've played it, and it's okay, but I don't think this deck needs it. It has great removal. And if I end up in white-black, I don't think it's necessary. Like just pushing through a little extra damage is not going to be how I win the game. And Edgar's Awakening, I don't know. I've never actually used this to any good effect. Like it seems fine to me, but it always feels a little clunky, or like there's better ways to generate value for me. But I'll take it. Like I might end up playing it. I don't know what my deck's going to look like, and I think it's better than the rest. This is just like a complete brick. Nothing here for me. These cards missing, couple white cards, no blue, no white, no black. Just take the Wedding Invitation. Here we get this Socialite, which is interesting. Note that people took like Impulse, Sharpshooter, Syncopate, these cards over the Socialite. So to me, it means, okay, my instinct from the first pack that black was open seems to be accurate. And it sucks that, all 3 of these white cards are gone. So this is not looking great for me. But, I'm happy to pick up a playable card here, so why not? Here, Stitch Assistant, again, hedging back into blue. I'm kind of getting the feeling that white is not open for us here. And so, I'm not really giving up too much here. Mentioned Beguiler and black-white, still kind of sitting in the middle, right? Because if I can get the playables for white, this Catilda is a huge reason to be able to do it. And Beguiler, like I said, I'll play one in black-white sometimes. So here, just random cards. And going back to here, this one was interesting for me too. I think Traveling Minister is, the best white common off the top of my head. It's just really, really good. But 2 things. Firstly, our deck is not really curving out that well. Like it's not really winning through aggression. It's more winning through value, and then maybe having some powerful late game. Even in the black-white version, we're just Catilda, Beguiler, removal spells. So the Minister is a little bit minimized there. I don't have like a Heron or anything like that. And again, I don't know that I'm white as much as I want to be. Bleed Dry is too good to give up on the speculation that I'm going to be white when I know I'm going to play the Bleed Dry. Also take note, there are some cards that I'd like to wheel. The Art School is okay. I likely would play it if I got it on the wheel, and similar with the Stitch Assistant if I do end up going this exploit route. And this was the point where I thought, okay, cool, maybe, we're giving up on white. I think Biolumeg is incredible. I also had the option of the Skull Scob here, but I think that Egg is, firstly, I think the Egg is just straight up better than Skull Scob in the decks that are doing that. And even still, like, I think there's a larger chance that you could wheel a Scob because of its 2 color. Black seems to be fairly open. And if that's the case, then, I'd rather take the card, firstly, that I think is better, but also take the card that is less likely to wheel the first time through. And then we'll see what happens. Also, no, I'm pretty happy if I can wheel the Scattered Thoughts here, having a bunch of good removal. And if I end up in blue, which it looks like I am, I'm very happy to be able to just have some card draw. Like, that's exactly what you want in your decks with good removal. Here, this again, kind of in between. To me, I already have some good exploit cards. I have this Gargantua. I have some Repo Scobs now with double Bleed Dry. And I have some decent creature targets. I mean, not incredible, but like, I guess Gargantua and Scavenger are both fine to get back. They're like powerful enough to do stuff. And so this was like a decision point for me, right? Because Quartermaster is great in white-black. Well, Quartermaster is great in every deck that you put a Quartermaster in. But I also note that I'm missing a lot of 2-drops. And so being in blue also gets me the Storm Chaser Drake back as a 2-drop. And this Undead Butler is nice in the sack deck, so why not? And here I'm still just kind of going in between. So at this point, I don't know exactly what I'm doing because I have this Bystander here, which is a very good 2-drop in white-black and just in, white in general, I think is quite good. And then there's Fleeting Spirit, which is, playable to decent and Retribution. So now all of a sudden there are these good high density of good white cards that people weren't taking in the first 3 picks. And I could take this Cruel Witness, which is decent, I think. I think I like this card a little more than most people, but it's also still, I don't think it's incredible. And again, this Catilda, it's influencing the whole draft, right? Because I think it would, if this were not here, this would feel to me like a very clear blue-black draft. But given that I still have the option to keep this and play this Catilda, I'm going to hedge a little bit, right? If I have a chance to move back. And at this point, I would mention that, I am counting my playables as I do this. So like, let's say I'm in white. I have 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope. 5 playables. And this would make 6. I think I didn't count this one. Whereas in blue, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and maybe 6 things I want to play. So I'm kind of right in the middle. But that I think I'm going to make it on playables either way that I go. I think the blue-black deck as it stands, I'd rather be playing the Repo Scobs than the Cruel Witness given my removal suite and the a couple exploit synergies I have. So I think that I don't want to clog my 4 slot and that I'm going to make it on playables no matter which direction I commit to. So I'm going to take this card to give me the option to still play the Catilda. And this was the kind of nail in the coffin. So finally, decisions made. This card, Diver Scob, is incredible. It's just really good. It's perfectly at home in the blue-black deck too. And so this was the point where I was fairly confident. All right, I'm going to go blue-black. I still have maybe that Skull Scob on the wheel, as well as the Scattered Thoughts from the pack that I took the egg from. So this is the point where I feel like, all right, I'm going to go blue-black. At which point, I kind of get lucky here, late Doom Dissenter. Again, we thought that black was open, so it's not so out of the ordinary, but it's exactly what I need, which is, I'm very fortunate to have picked it up. I need 2-drops. I need things that can be exploited, because I actually now do have a large number of exploiters. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 here, I think. And the Fellstinger, so 6 of them. So decent number of exploiters. I need 2-drops, so yeah, seems like an easy pick to me. And here I get a Scattered Thoughts, not the one that was from the wheel. This is just pick 7, but I'm happy to have one in my deck. And here I mentioned earlier, I'm not big on this card, but with as many exploiters as I have, I think that it actually is worthwhile here. Having something to drop early on curve to exploit is a really big deal, especially when you have some of these 3-drop exploiters. You don't want these cards to be the first thing that hits on your curve. And so even though, like I said, I very rarely will play this card, I think this is the deck for it. Here on the wheel, pick up the Stitch Assistant, which is great. This Archgold didn't wheel, which is fine. I would play if I had it, but it's, not something I'm missing a bunch. And so yeah, Stitch Assistant. Fear of Death. I noticed that my deck is a little bit weak to like flyers, for instance. I have a lot of value, but one of the ways you lose is people playing cheap flyers, and then you're going down on mana using like your 4 mana removal spells to kill their flyers. I have this Parasitic Grasp, which is just an incredible early game removal spell, but that's all I really have to combat it. I can block flyers with Storm Chaser Drake if I need to, but again, I think that having this in the sideboard is going to be really useful to fill a hole that the deck has. Here I took the Recluse because like I mentioned, I like having creatures that hit on curve prior to my exploit so that I have a body in play already. So like if I want to go to turn 5 and Diver Scob something, then I have that option. And just for a play pattern thing for these exploit decks, you often want to avoid trading off your creatures. It's much better to take an extra 3-4 damage earlier on. And of course, this is all situation dependent. But if you're planning to Diver Scob on 4 and you have the lands to get there most likely, or Gargantua, right, then, having this creature could be massively valuable, especially in the case of Diver Scob where you get to choose, which target to remove. Here, similar, just generic 2-drop. I'm not playing both, but I didn't get there on the Throng, so this is not making my deck. So might as well. And just random cards. And I actually lucked out. I think I end up playing this Gift of Fangs for the reason that I mentioned about the flyer weakness my deck has. So this being able to hit like I forgot what it's called, the blue-red gold card, Wandering Mind maybe. The 2/1 that comes in and draws a card. That's like the nightmare card for this deck because I'd have to use a removal spell on it and it likely gets some value. But yeah, this just removing small flyers, even on Heron, to stop me from dying, it's hugely valuable. So I think this deck kind of needs the Gift of Fangs. So the deck ends up looking, I think, like, so deck 1 was the final version. It ends up looking like this. Again, I have some decent sack fodder on 2, as well as a Stormchaser Drake. Great removal, and then enough value to get there in the end game. Notice I did end up getting away from the Catilda, so this deck has, I think this is a 0 rare deck, with a handful of uncommons, but, great removal and a clear plan. Playing both Undying Malice just because of the extent of exploit I have, as well as like the Stormchaser Drake synergy I mentioned, which came up in a few of my games. So this one was really interesting for me. I thought navigating the draft where the Catilda was a huge influencer, like for example when I took the Panic Bystander, even late in pack 3, but having the ability to move off of it in favor of a deck with a consistent plan and high density of good cards, I think is the right decision a lot of times. Notice I was still trying to keep, I'm not saying to just throw away your great bombs. A lot of the picks I made were in the interest of trying to play the Catilda, but if it doesn't work out, I do think that it's okay to move off of these, even the really, really good bombs sometimes. So yeah, I ended up with a 3-0 and fortunately just pretty happy for myself because it kept my streak alive. I've been on a nice one, so good run. I think it was my 7th consecutive trophy. But yeah, hopefully that was useful run through for anyone. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them because in every draft, I feel like there's plenty of stuff that I likely could have missed. And if other people have different perspectives, it'd be awesome to hear. Thanks.